Hi there, my name is Darian Bailey, and I'm here with Foundations of Educational Technology at Georgia Tech to present my final video on the rubber Goose Debugger. This video will have 4 parts. First, there will be an introduction to the tool, as well as why the tool was initially created. Second, I'll go through the development process of the tool and the overall plan for the improvement of the tool. Third, I'll go through all of the iterations that the tool has seen, and finally, in the 4th part, I'm going to go through a demo of the current tool. So this tool was created initially to combat the problem of debugging. Debugging in programming is a real issue. It takes up 50% of all development time. In 2013, $312 billion was spent in wages paying programmers to debug programs. Despite that, there's relatively little education. There are very few courses in a computer science undergraduate degree that focus on debugging, and even in boot camps, there's very little focus on debugging for a novice programmer. In addition, the tools that exist to aid in debugging are poorly adopted. To solve this overall issue of debugging, I decided to build a conversational agent that teaches novice programmers how to debug while helping them also debug problems that they encounter. The decision to build such a tool was based in part in the fact that such a tool had to be useful while also being educational. To develop the tool, I had 2 starting materials. First of all, I had a infrastructure in mind when I initially created the tool. The front end was going to be created in JavaScript and HTML and communicate through the backend to the backend through Ajax, which was a Flask server running a Python app with some natural language processing. In addition, I was planning to store all responses of the tool in a SQLite database. My second starting material was a flowchart I built out based upon a research paper by Wokai Chen that is in the description of this video. So this flowchart basically presented a way to debug to novice programmers. At each step, the flowchart will check to see whether or not a novice programmer is able to complete the step, and if they are, it will take them to the next step that will eventually debug the program. So building upon these starting tools, I created an improvement plan that reflected an agile methodology. So step 1 was to create or change the program based upon my understanding of the state of the world. Step 2 was to release the program to make it generally available to users, and then step 3 was, of course, to gather feedback. Throughout all these iterations that I went through with this tool, I always followed this plan, though my method for gathering feedback and my method for releasing the program have changed. So now we can see how that plan has guided my creation of iterations. So the initial iteration was a chatbot that ran in the terminal that basically guided people through the flowchart by drip feeding them the steps. There were several issues with this. First of all, people had to reply to each step that they were able to successfully complete the step in order to get to the next one. This required users to basically answer 8 questions before they generally were able to get to the question that they were actually having issues with. Secondly, because it was a chatbot, the chatbot had issues understanding users when users' replies were not in the corpus of responses the chatbot was trained to respond to. We can see this here when a user types in "not yet," the chatbot replies with "I don't understand." This was the boilerplate response to when the chatbot did not have a response in the corpus. Eventually, we can see that the user typed in "no," which was part of the responses, and that's how the chatbot was able to continue to the flow. After this initial iteration, I gathered some feedback, determining both the issue I mentioned, both issues I mentioned before, and that led to the second iteration, which was a conversational agent. It became a lot more user-friendly, having this logo of this rubber goose that would change on each response, and it was no longer a chatbot, but as we can see, replies were posted on the bottom of the window, and users were able to simply click on the step they were having issues with, and the chatbot would take them through, or this now conversational agent would take them through the solutions to the various steps. So after the second iteration, I went through a deeper, less casual method of gathering feedback, and that was to actually conduct a survey. I got 15 responses before I went on to create my third iteration, and I basically checked whether people were going to use we believed they were going to use the tool to help them solve coding problems. Most users said that they were, explaining that it had easy to use and good UX, and it was pretty deep in that respect. But the downsides were that it seemed to be geared towards beginning programmers, and the answers were too vague, and often it routed to humans. In the survey, people were more likely to recommend rubber goose debuggers to more junior programmers. I chalk this up to the fact that the survey was conducted to other master's students in the Georgia Tech program who were generally more experienced programmers. Despite these good scores, where 5 is a good score here, people ended up not using the second iteration. I gathered analytics on the site usage. Here on April 6th, we can see that the survey was released, so we had an initial peak of users, but then it fell off, and we currently have 0 users to the current iteration. So to improve this and actually get the tool to a place that hopefully users will want to continue using it, I did 3 things that we can see in the current demo. So first of all, we can see that the Rubber Goose Debugger is now also able to help you write code. And this is very similar to the debugging flow, except instead of 7 steps, there are now 4. Just like the other 7-step program, you can call out steps you need help with. And in this case, I'm going to select looking up something I don't know how to do. And this is the second thing I've changed, which is adding a feature that allows the Rubber Goose Debugger to actually search Google for you based upon your answers. So I'm going to type in add 4 to every element of a list, and then click done. It's going to ask me what programming language I'm using, and done, and then it will create a link that will just concatenate those two, and you can see it will come up with an answer here. And then finally, the third thing I did was I made sure that all of these conversational flows are both deep and have no issues with them. I did this through a QA process and a testing process. So with that concludes my presentation. I'd like to thank everybody for sitting through it, and just call out credits for SlidesGo for helping me create these slides, and Flat Icon for helping me create the icons. Thanks so much for sitting through my video, and please reach out with any questions or comments.